So I realized that nutrition is a controversial topic, and before making this video, I've had to think long and hard. That's what she said. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. Grow up! So nutrition is an extremely difficult topic to give advice on because it's so iffy and so personal. And this is partially because high quality nutritional evidence is hard to come by, and partially because the best nutrition protocol for one person might not be the best for another. So if you want to learn more about this, I would say you refer to my Be Skeptical of Nutritional Advice video, but for now I'm going to move on. Considering this ambiguity, I will have to carefully consider the scope of content that I'm posting in this video or any other nutritional based video that I'm going to be making in the future. So the approach I have decided for this video is as follows. I'm going to talk about the benefits of sorting out your nutrition in general and what it can do for you and why it's absolutely something worth getting obsessed about. And following that, I'm going to talk about the eating approach I believe is best and the one that I aspire towards. So without further ado, let's get on. So the first reason why you want to sort out your nutrition is because food can be medicine. Now nutrition is probably the most important element of your well-being. Taking a line from Sadhguru, he said, "You are built from within." Now that's a bit ARTY-FARTY for my liking, but it makes a lot of sense. What it means is that you are physically created from within your body. So we replace the cells of our body every year, and I don't mean this in some sort of literal sense. We gradually, our cells die and new cells are created within our bodies. Now the fuel you provide your body to undertake this process is crucial, and that fuel that you provide is your food. So food as medicine is a concept that's been adopted by the upcoming field of functional medicine. This is also a core principle of its more evidentially scrutinized brother, preventative medicine. Basically, the current model of modern medicine is known as allopathy, and that is restorative. So what happens is you go to the medical professional once you have symptoms, and then the medical professional treats the symptoms. These alternative models of medicine that I have discussed focus on finding ways to avoid getting sick in the first place. So for example, someone is diagnosed with a depressive order and will be given antidepressants to deal with it in an allopathic model. The functional medicine approach, on the other hand, would be to find the cause of the depression. Now, for example, it may look into whether you are deficient in some nutrient, or if your gut microbiome is disrupted, or you're not producing enough serotonin for some reason. And this approach is not necessarily some voodoo alternative medicine that has little basis in science, but in my opinion is a revolutionary change in the medical industry. We've far too long been focusing on symptoms rather than trying to prevent illness in the first place. Now, a little disclaimer here. Some practitioners of functional medicine do make certain leaps of faith, but I would argue that it is primarily evidence-based. And Jesus, there's so many disclaimers here already, but I'm going to let you know that nutritional science is a heartless bitch, and these disclaimers are necessary because all the information I'm giving here is not necessarily an absolute and could easily be contradicted by evidence that comes up in the future. So please keep that in mind as you're watching this. Now, the second reason to focus on your nutrition protocol is because eating is necessary to fight off diseases. So what you eat can be crucial to preventing certain diseases from arising in the future. Now, a number of degenerative diseases are epigenetic. So this means they're a result of genetic and environmental factors. So what this means is that a particular gene variant might make you more susceptible to an illness, but if you provide your body the environment which does not favor the onset of that disease, then you can mitigate the risk. For example, if you have the TCFL, there's a gene variant basically that I'm talking about that will make you more susceptible to type 2 diabetes. But you can mitigate this risk if you cut out simple sugars from your diet or if you exercise. All I'm saying here is that you can reduce the likelihood of it arising, not that you can completely eliminate it. You have to keep that in mind. So this is actually great information because it means we're not necessarily bound by our bad genes to a life of disease. By manipulating our lifestyle, we can prevent the occurrence of these diseases. Fixing what you eat is part of the puzzle of trying to avoid diseases such as cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and on. There's lots of diseases. But the fact of the matter is that eating is a crucial piece of the puzzle in avoiding all of these. Now, my third point, fixing your diet can give yourself the best chance at being happier. So what you eat can impact your mood and your general state of well-being, and I don't simply mean overcoming your hangry pangs, okay? A number of mood regulating neurotransmitters such as dopamine, GABA, and serotonin are produced in the gut. Think about this, 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. Tryptophan is that essential amino acid which is converted to serotonin in your brain, and your body cannot produce tryptophan on its own. It must consume it. And in addition to this, there are studies that have found that making positive changes to your gut microbiome can improve your overall mood. Because again, all these things are related, your gut, your mental health. So by fixing your gut, you are moving towards fixing your brain as well. Now finally, we're going to dive into the last one, that's eating to look better and feel better. Now everybody has heard about how abs are made in the kitchen, and in my opinion, when it comes to transforming your body, nutrition is just as important as exercise, if not more important. But we all know about this impact. Besides just the muscle, eating well will also change the way you present yourself to others in many other ways. Cleaning up your eating can reduce inflammation in your body, which may be causing things like acne, bad breath, hair fall, all these other physical attributes. Also, I won't dive into this further because I realize that everyone knows that optimal nutrition can fix all these things, but sometimes we forget these things when we're eating. We think about the short-term pleasure, what we're going to eat now, rather than the long-term pleasure that we derive from being healthier, looking healthier, and just being more pleasant that way. So slight detour here, where I'm going to talk about gut microbiome, which is related to the topic of looking better, and that's because gut microbiome has actually been found to change the way your body stores fat. So for example, consider that there have been some studies where they've done fecal gut microbiome transfer from a lean person to an obese person, and that has significantly helped that obese person lose that extra weight. Now, a fecal gut microbiome transfer is exactly what it sounds like, and it's a bit gross. So basically, it's taking the feces, poop, shit, whatever term you want to call it, from a lean person and transferring it to the obese person, and it's the change in that obese person's gut microbiome that facilitates that fat loss. Now, it's a bit gross, and before you run around going to scoop their skinny friend's poop out of their toilet, this is, again, it's not an absolute study. It's happened in some situations and it hasn't happened in some situations, and not an exact science, so just be careful. But all it suggests is that there is potential for gut microbiome to dictate your body type, how you eat, how your body stores fat, all those kind of things. So now that I've discussed the general things you can get from fixing your diet, I'm going to discuss how I eat. The first thing I do when deciding my eating protocol is to decide my goals. Now my goals are to supplement my workouts with adequate nutrition so I can build muscle, I can build strength, athleticism, and stay relatively lean. At the same time, I want to eat in a certain way that I can stay healthy in the long term as I get older. So keeping this in mind, I get the majority of my calories, that's about 70 to 75%, from plant-based foods, primarily from vegetables, fruits, nuts, pulses, whole grains, etc. So I get the remaining 20 to 25% of my calories from animal-based products, and I get that primarily from fish. So I eat fish mostly for ethical reasons, because I was thinking of transitioning to veganism and somewhere in that moral dilemma right now. So that's why I get that primarily from fish right now. But if you're eating meat, I would highly recommend that you eat organic, free-range meat, because you don't want to eat factory farm meat, and there's plenty of reasons for that. The environmental harm, the kind of stress the animals are put through, the kind of antibiotics that are put in these animals, that can't be good for you. So I would definitely recommend you stick to organic sources if you can. So deciding what you want to eat is a difficult question, and nutrition science will often provide you disappointing and contradictory answers. I'm guessing you watched this video and you kind of want some kind of recommendation, so I'm going to give you a broadish recommendation and some guidelines, but that's all I can give you in good faith. What I would recommend is for you to focus on what you should not eat rather than what you should eat. Now there are certain things that we know you shouldn't eat, like sugar, processed foods. These are blatantly in the category of foods that should be avoided. Now there are gray areas such as dairy, gluten, grains, animal protein, carbohydrates, fat, blah 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 blah. All those things that people tell you really should eat or not eat. So I would say focus on eliminating. So my recommendation is to go about an elimination process from your diet. So ever so often pick one of these food groups that are susceptible to this kind of criticism, because I guess that's a good guideline to go by, and eliminate them from your diet for about a week or a month. The longer you do it, the better, because I'll give you a better idea of that impact of that food. And after you do that, examine the way you feel, perform, and look, and use these parameters to judge whether that food was causing you more harm or was it doing you good. Now, this can be done with specific foods or entire food categories. However, keep in mind that this process is not perfect, because it's very hard to first of all judge how a food is treating you, and something might treat you well in the short term and be bad in the long term. For example, consider keto or the carnivore diet, where some people see drastic improvements in health after a few months or even a year of jumping on those kinds of diet. However, over the long term, they start to see their negative effects on their health. Now, it doesn't mean it has to have a negative effect, and some people could live like that forever, but there are situations where this has happened. So consider that this method is not completely perfect, but according to me, it's probably the best way to figure out what to eat and what not to eat. So another thing I do is time restricted eating, but some of you may know it as intermittent fasting. Now, there are a number of reasons that I do this. So there is some research that suggests it can reduce digestive inflammation. Another reason I fast is because I find my focus is a lot sharper when I'm in a fasted state. So some studies have found that people have a surge of BDNF when they're in a fasted state. And BDNF is that protein I talked about in my last video that promotes the growth of neurons. So think about it from an evolutionary perspective. Ancient hunter-gatherer had to be mentally sharp when they were in a fasted state, as being in a fasted state would suggest that they needed food soon, and therefore they would have to go out and hunt for that food or gather that food, and for that they would have to be in their best mental state. My final reason for fasting is again because of my buddy David Sinclair, where he talks about how creating a temporary state of starvation in your body activates those sirtuins, those favorite sirtuins that I bring up in every single subject. But they are extremely important because as of now in aging science, they seem to be the hot topic. They seem to be the things that if we can figure out how to manipulate them, they could solve the problem of aging. So intermittent fasting is one way that he thinks we can activate those sirtuins on a regular basis. Now, if you look across the board, calorie restriction is one of the most consistent interventions that is associated with a longer lifespan in a number of species. This is all the way from yeast to mice to spiders. But what I have found in my research is that fasting allows you to get the same benefits of calorie restriction without having to actually restrict your calories for an extended period of time. So guys, that's all for today's video, and the next video of this series is going to be about sleep, and it's going to be a lot easier because my advice is going to be very straightforward in that, and I'll actually give it to you now. Get your 7 hours of sleep in, and that video is going to tell you what will happen if you don't do that. Look forward to that, and I'll see you guys next time.